Okay, I'm sorry if this pop up. I guess this computer caught a virus. I'm sorry I can't be there today. Miss Miller is there. I hope that you guys can get the most out of this review as possible. Okay. Um, After the drill, you will hand in your homework to Miss Miller, and then we will continue on. What I'll do is, like we've been doing every day, you'll have some practice, some FRQ. Miss Miller will stop the video, give you a minute. You could write your answers on a board, then put up your boards, and then I will explain the best I can doing this. If you have any questions, that don't get answered. I tried to get Mike Infusi to be able to answer them. If he can't answer them, just write them down and we'll go over them Friday. So the drill is, if the federal government decreases its expenditures by 10 billion and decreases its taxes by 10 billion, which of the following will occur in the short run? So if the federal government decreases its expenditures by 10 billion and decreases its taxes by 10 billion, which of the following will occur in the short run? Okay, give you a minute or two, and then we'll come back. Okay, the answer is going to be E as in Ellen. Aggregate income will decrease by up to 10 billion. Now, why? Okay. Remember, real GDP, income, and employment all move in the same direction. All right. So whichever way AD moves, income is going to move. So I'm just going to make the spending multiplier 5. I mean, you can make it whatever you want. I'm just using it to give you an example. So we decreased expenditures by 10 billion. 10 billion but times 5 equals negative 50 billion. So AD will decrease by 50 billion. The tax multiplier is 1 minus the spending multiplier. If I decrease taxes by 10 billion times a minus 4, 1 minus 5 is minus 4, I then get an increase in aggregate demand by 40 billion. Negative 50 billion plus 40 billion gives me negative 10 billion. If GDP decreases by 10 billion, so income decreases by 10, E as in Ellen. You got to be careful on the AP exam. They do this a lot. They give you the tax and spending multipliers equally, okay? And just always remember that the spending multiplier is greater than the tax. So if government spending and increase in government spending and increase in taxes are the same, government spending is going to always win. If there's a decrease in government spending and a decrease in taxes, government spending is always going to win. All right. This week, I'll be here after school today. It's one of those 10 after 10s. I'm going to really focus it on macro to try to get us ready for Tuesday and Wednesday's exam. Okay. Friday, we have the graphing quiz. It will be on all the macro graphs and the shifters. Talking to the guys yesterday, a lot of people didn't know the shifters of loanable fund. I mean, a Phillips curve. So get those down. Monday, I'll do a Zoom review at 7:45. The real part of that review is to go over the practice test. Please take the practice test before you come in and take the exam. I'll also be there Tuesday morning at 7:45 to review the practice test. All right, great. I know some of you guys are going to Chicago. I know that'll be tough. Try to do the practice test maybe on the plane. Work together. All right, Tuesday, 30 multiple choice. Wednesday, 30 multiple choice. Total of 90 points. All right. All right. Better review with your partner. I'm just going to go over all of these, and I'll try to go over them slowly in case you want to write it down. All right. Okay. The long run. The long run versus the short run. The short run in macro is sticky wages, okay? And what do I mean by sticky wages? I mean that wages and resource prices don't change in the short run. Why? Because usually there's contracts, all right? So, like I have a contract to Calvert Hall. If price levels go up, that doesn't affect me. I'm still getting the same nominal wage, the wage on my paycheck. That's the short run. All right. So wages and resources are sticky. In the long run, wages and resources are flexible. All right. And that's why you get from, without government intervention, you go to SRAS to the left. All right. Now, I'm just going to go the velocity of money, and I'm just going to put it up here to try to remind you the formula for the velocity of money is money supply, which is M, times V, which is velocity, equals price level, which is P, times Y, which is output. Now, so you remember P times Y, price level times output is nominal GDP. So M times V equals nominal GDP, price level times output. The change in only output is real GDP. Real GDP measures just the change in output. Okay. So that is the velocity of money. All right. Ample reserves is what we have now in the United States. It is that the banks are flush with reserves, mainly because they're keeping a lot of their money away in the Fed. All right. That's ample reserves. Buying and selling bonds isn't going to change interest rates. The real shifter of interest rates is administered interest rates. Administered interest rates shifts both discount rate and interest on reserves. The limited reserves is where where reserve requirements, open market operations, and discount rate all change. And will all impact AD. So in an ample, if we have a recessionary gap, which is kind of what we on the bottom, in the ample, I want to shift AD to the right. I am going to lower the administered rates. And the monetary policy and limited is ROD. So I could lower the reserve requirement. I could lower open market operations. I could lower the discount rate. All of those could happen in a limited reserve. In the ample, it's really only administered rates or interest on reserves. Now, the $5,000 versus the $5,000 Fed buy bonds. I just made the reserve requirement point to that's what it's been the problem. So if someone deposits a $5,000, 20% of that has to go in required reserves. That gives me 1,000. If I take the 5,000 minus the 1,000 in required reserves, the excess is 4,000. Now, 4,000 is the maximum that bank could loan out. But if they ask you for the maximum in the money supply in the entire system, whenever I see the entire system, then I know I'm going to have to use the money multiplier. So that is 1 over the reserve requirement, or 1 over 0.2 is 5. So 4,000 times 5 equals 20,000. Now, in a bond, it's a $5,000. Nothing is taken out. The only time you take out for reserve requirement is on demand deposits. A bond, nothing is taken out. So I have an excess of 5,000. So that bank could lend out 5,000. If they ask again for the whole system, it's 5,000 times the money multiplier 5 equals 25,000. If there is any questions, I am sure Drew Rogalski could help and answer. Okay, let's see what the next thing was. There's three uses of money. One is the medium of exchange. The medium of exchange is you go buy a product and service, and for that product and service, you give them money. That's medium of exchange. So you go to the Sage, you get ripped off, you give them $10, they give you some crappy food. That is medium of exchange. Unit of account is we look over at the computer on my desk, and I say it's worth 200. You immediately know the value of that computer. That's a unit of account. Okay. Some of you are working and you're saving money for college. That's store value. Store value is using money to save. So quickly, let's go over the three. You have medium of exchange, that's using money to buy goods and services. You have unit of account, that's putting a value on a product or service. And then you have store of value, and that's saving. All right, shifters of money supply and MD, those would go with limited reserves. And I've alluded to the money supply. The shifters is Rod. JT, could you give me Rod? Good job, JT. It's reserve ratio, open market operations, buying and selling bonds, and discount rate. Now, for the test, you got to take it a step further. If I want to fix a recessionary gap and shift AD to the right, I need to know I got a lower reserve requirement, buy boom for bonds, and lower the discount rate. What is MD in the limited money supply graph? That's money demanded. The shifter there is price levels, and do I need more or less money in my pocket? If price levels go up, I need more money in my pocket. Demand shifts upward. The introduction of credit cards, I needed less money in my pocket. Demand shifted left. Shifters of loanable funds. True Chico, could you give us the shifters of supply? Okay, you're right. Savings and lending. And then demand is borrowing, government spending, and investment. And we did the monetary policy. Now, while I'm talking about MS and MD, which is the limited reserve, anytime, like if I heard nominal interest, if I hear limited reserves, I think of the perfectly inelastic MS and the downward sloping MD. When I hear government spending, budget deficit, surplus, government, anything with government, business investment, then savings, then I think of loanable funds. Okay, I'm going to give you like 3 or 4 minutes. Miss Miller is going to shut this off, and I'm going to allow you then to do this. Try to do it independently, like you were getting it on a test, okay? We're not collecting this. We're just trying to see how much you know. Okay, Savi, great to be back. All right, Savi, assume the required reserve ratio is 10%. What is the dollar value? Okay, now, Savi, the 1,800, that's loaned out already, so we can't make new loans. So the demand deposit's 2,000. I have to keep 10% of that, which is 200 in required reserves. All I have is 200. So, Savi, I can't lend out anything. Okay. And because I have to keep 200 required, that's all I have. 0 is the answer there. Sam Ryan, how you doing? Glad to have you back. Missed you yesterday in lecture. Think I called on you, but you weren't there. Mr. Smith deposits $100 of cash in demand deposit account in First Superior Bank. Calculate the maximum amount of new loans that First Superior can now make. All right, Sam, he deposits $100. How much of that 100 has to be kept in required reserves? $10. You're right. That gives me $90. 100 minus 10. I now have $90 that I could loan out. Okay. That is excess. I could loan out the $90. All right. That's how much. As a result of Mr. Smith's $100 cash deposit, calculate the maximum change over time in each of the following. Okay. So if I see maximum change in the banking system, boom, I'm thinking money multiplier. I have to use money multiplier. So 1 over the reserve requirement is the money multiplier. 1 over 0.1, the reserve requirement, equals 10. The loans, all right, for the whole system is excess I could loan out times the money multiplier. 90 times 10 gives me 900. Now, the next one was, what is the impact on demand deposits? Well, we deposited 100 times the multiplier is 1,000. So 900 would be my answer to change in loans, 1,000 to demand deposits. Okay. Now, as a result of Mr. Smith's $100 cash deposit, calculate the maximum change over the money supply. You're going to do that as you calculate the change in loans. I have 90 in excess times the money multiplier is 900. So it's feel uncomfortable. The loans and here, the money supply are the same answer, but it's right. It's 900 for each of them and 1,000 for demand deposits. Provide one reason why the actual change in the money supply can be smaller than the maximum change you identified in Part D. Whenever the money supply, you're counting on 2 things. 1, you're counting on banks to loan out the money. And 2, you're counting on people to put the money in banks. If people hold on to the money multiplier doesn't work as well. If banks don't loan out the money multiplier doesn't work as well. Okay, as I've said, FRQs, they're not made in AP to get hundreds. You want to get as many points as possible, okay? On one of these, if you get 4 out of 5, 4 or 5 out of 5, that's what guys who get 5s are. If you're going to get 3 or 4, that's what guys who get 4s are, and 3 are guys who get 3s. Okay. Assume the reserve requirement is 20%. If a bank initially has no excess reserves and 10,000 in cash is deposited in the bank, the maximum amount by which this bank may increase its loans is, I'll give you a minute and then Ms. Miller will put on my explanation. Okay. If I deposited 10,000 and the reserve requirement is 20%, I got to keep 2,000 in reserve requirement. All right. 10,000 minus 2,000 gives me 8,000. So 8,000 is the maximum this bank can loan out. I don't use the money multiplier because it only said this bank. Okay, we got to read carefully. Assume the economy is at equilibrium. If aggregate demand increases, what's going to be the effect on nominal interest rates and bonds? All right, if aggregate demand increases, I know real GDP and price levels increase. If they're asking me about nominal interest, there is that graph, right? The perfectly inelastic. This is the limited reserve. I know a shifter for money demanded is price levels. Or do I need more or less money in my pocket? If price levels go up, I need more money. I need more money, Graham Roberts. Therefore, if price levels goes up, there we go, interest rates go up. And I know bonds and interest rates have an inverse relationship. Nominal interest rates up, bond prices down. If a banking system has ample reserves, which of the following is an action taken by the central bank that would cause a decrease in cyclical unemployment in the short run? All right, first thing I think of is if I want to decrease cyclical unemployment, remember and I'm just going to try to quickly draw this. So on the SRAS AD, remember, it's axes, real GDP, income, and employment. If I want cyclical unemployment to decrease, I want employment to increase. I want AD going right. All right. I need something here that will shift AD to the right. All right. Take a minute and we'll come back with an answer. Okay. An increase in the required reserve is going to reduce the money supply, all right, and shift MS to the left, raising interest rates, AD to the left. We don't want that. An increase in the policy rate is also an increase in the interest rate, which business investment down, AD to the left. We want that. An increase in the discount. Notice if the discount and the policy rate, they're the same in interest rates. They could have the same effect. Business investment down, AD to the left. Okay. For True Chico, what is the difference? Well, the discount rate is the rate that Fed loans banks. All right. Policy rate is kind of the interest rate, like a lot of times could be called the federal funds rate. All right. Now, a decrease on the interest on reserves. Now, the interest on reserves is the interest the Fed pays banks when they put money in. So the discount rate is the interest the Fed charges banks when they borrow. But the interest on reserves is the interest the Fed pays banks when they put money in the Fed. But anyhow, just look at all of these, this like a decrease in interest, business investment up, AD to the right. So D as in dogwood would be the answer. Okay, give you a minute to look at this and then answer the question. All right, which of the following accurately describes the federal funds rate? It's the interest rate banks charge other banks for overnight loans. I mean, that's basically the definition. But again, the federal funds rate, which is an interest rate, the policy rate, which is an interest rate, interest on reserves, discount. If they go down, business investment up, AD right. If they go up, okay, business investment. Let me start again because I might have just confused. If policy rate, discount rate, federal funds rate, if interest rates go up, business investment down, AD to the left. If they go down, interest rate on the federal funds, discount rate, interest on reserves, administrative rate, any interest rate goes down, business investment up, AD to the right. Okay, let's take a minute. If business becomes optimistic about the profitability of investments in an economy, which of the following will happen in the loanable funds market in the short run? Okay, I see investment. I see loanable funds. I know, because we talked about earlier, that a shifter of demand is government spending, investments, and borrowing. So demand is going to shift right, demand shifts right, the real interest rate will increase. Okay. I'm going to give you a minute here to look at this. Okay. Again, I said administered interest rates, they all do the same. So if administered interest rates are up, I know business investments down, ADs to the left. Now, why would I want to shift AD to the left? I probably have an inflationary gap. So I either want to lower the GDP or lower the price level. So it's D, rising price level. I'm responding to rising price levels. It's an inflationary gap. So therefore, I'm raising the interest rate, business investment down, AD to the left. Okay. What I'd like you to do is just do A and B. And I think we could give you about 3 minutes to do A and B. All right. If we look at A and B, there is your graph. Assume the economy is and the actual unemployment rate is lower. So if it's lower, I'm going to be to the right of the LRAS. Remember, real GDP, employment, and income are all going in the same direction. So Y1 employment is higher, so unemployment is lower. So I've got a point for SRAS SAD, price level real GDP, and 1 point for the LRAS to be to the left. Now, B, assume the country's banking system has ample reserves. All right, I know if it's ample reserves, that's administrative interest rates. What monetary policy action should the central? All right, so if I want to move long run equilibrium, I want AD shifting left. All right, what do I have to do? I have to higher or raise the administered interest rate. Okay. All right. Now, Ms. Miller is going to give you 3 or 4 minutes to do C and D. Okay. So here is C. All right. Now, notice policy rate and quantity of reserves, the axis, supply of reserves and demand of reserves. It is important to put the supply of reserves on the perfectly elastic part of the curve. That shows it's an ample reserve system. If you put it on the downward sloping part, it is a limited reserve. All right. So you got to point, you got to put your arrows up so they know. And remember, it's IOR, interest on reserves, and interest on reserves too. Notice you don't have to put the discount rate there. Okay. If we still have time, let's do E. Assume instead that the central bank does not pursue the monetary action from Part B and there was no other government intervention. Will each of the following increase, decrease, or remain the same? All right. So we're going to have no government interaction, and we're here. Okay. So what do we know? We know at Y1, we're making more workers. We're making more product than YF. Therefore, we need more workers. If the demand for workers increases, wages are going to go up. We know wages is RAP. It's part of resource. The resources they use a lot is cost of production, oil, wages. Wages go up, companies make less money, SRAS to the left. So short run, supply shifts left due to an increase in wages. All right, what happens to employment? Well, we know real GDP, income, and employment go in the same direction. So if I'm going from Y1 back to YF, employment decreases. All right. All right. I truly, truly appreciate your efforts. I am really sorry I couldn't be here. Remember the graphing quiz tomorrow. Know all the macro graphs. Thank you again. Ms. Miller, thank you.